Welcome to the Delingpod with me, James Delingpole. And I know I always say I'm excited about this week's special guest, but before we meet him, let's have a word from one of our sponsors. Welcome back to the Delingpod, Patrick Wood. I'm very pleased to see you. It's been too long. How are you?
It really has, and welcome from the across the pond, right?
Yeah, I don't do enough Americans. I mean, you're a big audience and a good audience, a loyal audience, and I should be reaching out to my my colonial cousins.
Well, we like you over here, we really do, and I know you have. I've run across people independently at random who say, "Oh, I heard you once upon a time on the Delingpole's podcast," and whoa, who knew? But there's people who follow you actually.
That is, I know, and I love a good chunk of America, I'd say. But I wonder whether I'm ever going to come back. Whenever I think about America, the first thought that comes into my head is the queue or the line, as you would call it, at immigration.
Yes.
And I'm queuing up to be vetted by somebody who has the power to just decide on a whim to send me back to Blighty. And then there's your intelligence services. I mean, do I trust the CIA or the FBI not to execute me? Not necessarily. And I don't know. Maybe there's bad reasons. It's just a hassle, isn't it?
It really is. And, there are so many evil people in the world. Borders do not contain them at this point. And, when you look at, I know you a little bit, just from our interaction in the past, but we're pretty normal people. I can sense that in you, and you don't want to take over the world. You don't want to lord it over everybody else in the whole world. And you know what? When we compare ourselves, we're the same. We're absolutely the same. We have the same aspiration. We don't want people to manipulate us and control us and try to make us do things that we don't want to do and that sort of thing. This is the longing of all men and women everywhere. And I get so many emails from overseas, and I marvel because they give me the sentiment that they're just like me in the first place. It's like, well, okay, all these government blokes, you want to just say to them, get off her back, for crying out loud. Just go away, back off, dude.
Yeah. I think it's got to be, as you say, about the most normal, powerful instinct within us all. Completely natural. Just leave me alone and let me get on with my life. I mean, imagine a world where whoever they are, weren't conspiring on really quite a micromanagerial level to render your life tedious, bureaucratic, taxed, regulated, constrained. So many of the things we spend our time worrying about, I suspect, are actually not things of our own making, but things which were created by a tiny, tiny minority of people who just hate us, and just a bit like as flies to wanton boys are we to the gods. They kill us for their sport. That's what they're like. They want to pull our wings off and get magnifying glasses and concentrate the rays of the sun. And like I used to do when I was a naughty boy. I feel bad about it now. I used to do it to ladybirds, and I feel really guilty about it. I think when I go up to the pearly gates, and St. Peter is deciding whether or not to let me in, he's going to say, James, when you burn those ladybirds, what you think you were going to get away with it? You think you weren't going to burn in eternal hellfire for that? But that's what the so-called elites, or the predator class, as I sometimes call them, or the cabal, that's what they do.
It seems that way, doesn't it? It really does. It really does. And we saw this, for instance, when Agenda 21 was first started in 1992, when the United Nations got all this thing started with sustainable development, mostly. There was a subtle change in the language definition of words back in that day, when they talked about the resources of the world, and they talk about, well, there's the oil, and there's timber, and there's farming, and all this, the animals, and fish, all those resources of the world, right? What we didn't catch was they changed the definition of the resources that they wanted to manage to include us as well. So this was never the case before, where we were considered the resources that needed to be managed. It's like, well, this is where this all came from at this point. That was the watershed at that point.
How did they express this? Is there a sentence that one could find where it says,
Well, it said just that. That we were the resources. In fact, you can go back to the Technocracy study course even in 1934. It said basically the same thing, that we're the resources of the world. We're part of the balance, if you will, because we're the consumers of all these resources. So they postulated that, well, we have X amount of resources to go around, and we have Y consumers over here that want to have their share. And how could we balance this whole thing out? Well, you have to manage everything in the system. That included us at that point. So,
yeah, it's a completely arbitrary rule, isn't it? The
yes.
idea that left to our own devices, we're going to somehow generate chaos and undesirable things, because apparently we're also horrible, and we need an elite class of bureaucrats, don't we, to manage us and to make sure everything is coordinated and allocated efficiently.
Efficiency, there's the key word. Technocrats love that word, efficiency. If it's not efficient, it's going to be made so. If you're not efficient, you're going to be made efficient.
Now, efficient. Now you mention it. When did that word become current? I mean, I don't recall reading Paradise Lost, for example. I don't think Milton ever used the word efficient. Did Shakespeare, or rather the people who wrote Shakespeare?
I don't think not that old for sure. You can trace probably the genesis of the word back to the philosophy called Taylorism in the early 1900s. He's the guy that basically reformed, if you will, manufacturing to take to make assembly lines and use it. He used time and what do you call it? Time studies.
Time and motion.
Exactly, and time and motion studies. He was a brilliant guy, obviously, and he did a lot of homework on it. But this is the guy who said, well, we need to make everything efficient. And we're going to trim all the fat out of the manufacturing process so we can make more products in less time and whatever. That's where the concept of productivity came in, by the way. We see all this talk today about productivity.